Welcome back for another episode of PTS&Me. I'm your host, Brandon Langford. Today we're going to be talking about triggers. What are they, how to identify them and recognize them, and then what are some ways to get past it? Enjoy. All right, so let's talk about triggers. I kind of struggled this week, last 2 weeks, as I was trying to come up with this material. And then I quickly realized how much I don't know. And I say that in the sense of it is easy to talk about something, but it is much more difficult to inform people that are going to be listening all around the world about PTS and making sure that you are providing accurate information. So I was talking with a bunch of different people leading up to this episode. And then every time I talked to somebody, it was like, wow, I never thought about it that way. Oh, wow, I didn't realize like everything that happened in the brain when there's a traumatic experience. Wow, I didn't realize about the amygdala, the hippocampus, the prefrontal cortex, and how when you go into a traumatic experience, an event, everything is recorded in your brain. You may move on from it. And I don't mean that in the sense of like, I didn't realize that you remember things, but like just how it was recorded. And then when you go into an event, years down the road, that is very similar to your traumatic event without the trauma, that it triggers your brain again. And you are experiencing exactly what you felt in the moment of the traumatic experience, even though there was no actual traumatic experience happening at that point in time. I just, with someone with PTS, it's like I'm watching a movie. And so let's back up 2 steps. My triggers, one of my biggest one is watching war movies. Reason being is that if it's an actually accurate war movie, then it will create this feeling inside of me. My blood pressure goes up. I get anxiety. I start sweating. I get uncomfortable. I can't sit still. And then I get irritated with the movie itself and start trying to find inaccuracies. So, I stopped watching war movies for the most part. I still enjoy them, but I can't just sit there and get involved. Saving Private Ryan being one of my favorite war movies of all time. I remember when that one came out in the late 90s, there was a article that was done, I believe it was by CBS, and it was talking about how World War II vets went in and watched the movies and they experienced PTSD because the movie was so accurate and reflective of their experiences that it brought back those emotions and they were reliving them. And so I've experienced that with like movies like American Sniper, the story about Chris Kyle being a sniper. And that was one of the jobs that I had in the military. But how he would come home. And for me, that's like one of the most accurate movies depicting PTS. Because I remember a scene where he's sitting in a chair and it shows the sound of what you think is a combat movie on TV. And as it pans around him, he's just got this blank stare on his face and he's just staring into the television screen. And then it pans around and it gets to the TV and the TV's not even on. All of that, he is reliving it in his mind. And it's just, it became a part of who he was. And, moving forward into his life, the way he got his life back on track was by helping other veterans and giving back to the community until, unfortunately, one of those individuals took his life. Another issue that I have, another trigger, is parking lots. I absolutely hate them. When I was talking with my wife about this, I didn't initially include this one as a trigger because I just figured it was one of those things that I just got frustrated about. So I always look at the triggers as, is this a PTS trigger or am I just triggered by stupid people? And I told her, I said, I don't want to talk about the parking lots because I just get frustrated and irritated with people. And she goes, oh, I think it is a PTS trigger. I said, how so? And she said that I am so used to having to be aware of where am I at? What's in front of me? What's behind of me? Is there a threat? Who's this person coming at me? Assessing that situation, looking at everything as though I'm on a patrol in Afghanistan or Iraq. And it's like, you're walking down the road and it's like you're looking at every piece of trash. You know, is this an IED? You're looking at all the doors and all the windows. Is there somebody getting ready to try and shoot me? You're watching the people. What's their reaction? Are they staying up close and friendly, or are they starting to scatter because they know something's about to happen and you don't? And so that, you know, gets ingrained. You just naturally do that. You're naturally just constantly assessing the situation. And then you apply that to a parking lot and, okay, I'm going in front of Harris Teeter and I got this person getting ready to cross the road and I got this person who's walking down the middle of the aisle as though they can't even see that I'm coming. So get out of the way, step over to the side, be a polite person. And then it's like, okay, well, here comes another vehicle this way. Well, are they going to try and take my parking spot? Oh, crap, I got somebody that just pulled in behind of me, so I don't want to just sit here and not know what I'm doing. Is somebody backing out? Okay, this is just, okay, I'm going to go check out a different aisle. And then the same thing happens. And it's like, you know what, forget this. I'm going to park either far away or we're going someplace else because I've had it. So I can definitely see that relation, even though I didn't think that it was like a PTS trigger, but I can definitely see where it could be. Large crowds is another one. Going back to being so used to controlling your environment. And then suddenly you come home and you're in an environment that is uncontrollable. You don't have the same permissions and authorities at the local mall that you would have overseas. You definitely don't have the same ROE, but rules of engagement. But, you know, being in large crowds, being in large spaces where it makes it uncomfortable and it doesn't feel right. That's another trigger. Another one, smells. There's certain smells that will just take you back. And if anybody has been overseas and been around burn pits, if you smell something that's burning and it's got that distinct smell, it will immediately take you right back to where you were in Afghanistan or Iraq. Not saying that being around a burn pit is a trigger, but there are definitely certain smells and sounds that can take you back. So again, how does all this happen? So I did some research on Psych Central about PTS and the traumatic experiences that happen in the brain when there is an event. So it broke it down, talked about the amygdala, hippocampus, and the prefrontal cortex. So the amygdala is, and this is from psychcentral.com, it is the part of the brain considered the fire alarm. Once it senses danger, the amygdala is the part that kicks you into fight or flight mode. So when you're living with trauma and your amygdala doesn't recognize the difference between a threat then and a threat now, that's where you're reliving the event, even though it's not happening anymore. So my amygdala has recorded the event. My body remembers exactly what I felt in the moment of that event. And now it's 10 years in the future. Something triggers a response. It goes right back in my brain, goes right back into fight or flight mode. And even though there is no threat, I am responding as though there is a threat. And it sends out a rush of hormones and like cortisol throughout your body, preparing you for action. And for, you know, anybody that's been in a firefight, like, you know what it's like. You're walking down the road and then suddenly you're being shot at. And it's going from 0 to 100 in like 0 seconds. And you're just automatically switched on and you forget everything else. It's like you get tunnel vision. You shouldn't get tunnel vision, but you get sucked into, I am in survival mode right now, and I need to find, fix, and finish the enemy. And, that's healthy in combat because you need to be dialed on and focused. But it's not healthy when you're sitting in your living room and the dog starts barking or your kids are a little bit too loud and you get that same response and your body perceives it as a threat when there is no threat. When you move on to the hippocampus, so that's located at the back of your brain and it's considered to be the learning center. It's smaller and less active in people who've experienced trauma, which can create issues around memory and problem solving. This can make it hard for you to distinguish between the past and the present, keeping you in a constant state of hypervigilance or strong emotional reactivity. So I have found myself being very hypervigilant over the past couple of years. And it would be situations that would be very normal for any other person. But in my mind, they were abnormal and they were perceived as a threat. One specific instance to provide some detail and context was I was driving home one day, got off the interstate, got onto one of the side roads, had somebody come flying up behind me. They passed me. They were up ahead of me about 50 feet or so, and then they just slammed on their brakes. So I had to slam on mine. Then they sped up, and immediately, instead of my brain going, well, this dude's an idiot, it was, this is some type of threat. I noticed another vehicle come up behind of me, and now I'm getting boxed in. They're setting me up. This isn't right. And I got very paranoid. Anxiety kicked in, fight or flight kicked in. I turned off the radio. I was just paying attention. I was memorizing license plates, paying attention to the people that were in the vehicles. What were the rest of their actions? The guy in front of me pulls off on the road we were coming up to, and the guy behind me kept following me for another 20 minutes or so, and then eventually went on his way. But in my mind, it was a setup. Something was about to happen because, coincidences and stupid drivers, when you've had experiences with IEDs and improvised explosive devices and then VBIDs, vehicle-borne IEDs, or, dealing with militias that are possibly trying to take you to prison or kidnap you or whatever the case may be, that's where your brain goes back to. It's not this guy's an idiot, I'm going to pull over and just let him keep going. It's something's going on. I need to be prepared to react. I actually, when I initially started therapy, I went to a therapist and I said, this was a military one. I said, hey, I think I got some problems. I experienced that event. And this was my response in the moment. He was like, oh man, that means you got good training. You're hypervigilant. Like, you're aware of your surroundings. That's good. And I told my buddy the other day, I said, yeah, that was my experience. He goes, no, that is not good. That is not what a normal person responds like. And that was really bad advice. And I knew it was bad advice at the time. But yeah, that's not what normal people do. So then you got the prefrontal cortex. This is the rationale decision-making area. And when you've experienced trauma and you're living with trauma, there's research that shows the prefrontal cortex is less active. The suppression can slow down the learning of new information that could help you control your fear. Combining with an overactive amygdala, the prefrontal cortex can have a harder time overriding the fight, flight, or freeze response. So if you think about it in the context of, I got an idiot that passes me, slams on his brake, somebody else that comes up behind of me, my brain should be going, this is not a threat. He's passing you, realizes he's about to miss his turn. He's just a bad driver. The guy behind of you just happens to be driving on the exact same road you are at the exact same time you are. But my brain could not process that it was not a threat and that I should not be responding the way that I did physically, but that it's just an idiot driver. So everything had slowed down. So I found it in that perfect storm of the PTS, the TBI, the anxiety, the way I respond and react. It's like my brain can't filter through what's real and what's not real. So having these types of triggers are really hard on your friends and family, because while you're going through this event and that there's something that triggers it, they don't see the triggers as perceived threats or triggers that make you remember the situation as though it were really happening, and putting your body back in that situation. So as an example, like my kids, my wife has the patience of a saint and I don't. And so when I watch them and and they make loud noises, that triggers something inside of me, especially if it's unexpected. So the other day, I'm in the office working. My wife left and she told our youngest daughter, she goes, "Okay, stay here and stay quiet. Daddy's working." And it wasn't 30 seconds. I don't even think my wife was out of the driveway yet. My daughter comes sneaking up behind of me and throws a bucket on the ground, which immediately, it would startle anybody, but it immediately takes me back to, in combat, what does a loud, unexpected pop sound like? Well, it's gunfire or maybe an explosion. So while somebody may hear that, let's use my wife as an example, where my wife is going to hear that, she's going to go, "Oh, you scared me. Hey, don't do that, okay?" Whereas me, it gets taken to the next level because now my anxiety is jumped up and irritated that she did that. I'm not irritated with her, but it's like my irritation level goes up. I don't know, maybe I am irritated with her, but it just takes it to the next level. And my wife has gotten to the point where, she has helped me identified. And as I figured out what my triggers were, I shared them with her. So that way, when something is happening, she is there to help keep my response low. And what I mean by that is when things are happening and she knows that it's going to create anxiety in my life, she will inject herself to be in between the trigger and me. So a lot of times when we go to places, I let her drive. If we're going out to the mall or Lowe's Food or Lowe's Hardware or any place where it's going to be crazy, I let her drive, because I'd rather sit there and criticize her driving and her get mad at me than me sit there and get mad at every other person around me and become miserable, and then making her miserable and making her feel like she, has to respond a certain way or can't respond a certain way to help me because I've jumped to that next level. And it just takes me a little bit to calm down and get right back into the correct headspace and just not be so aggressive, and because it's not fair to them either for a response that I'm having inside of my body and inside of my brain to get irritated and then to take it out on them. And I mean that in the sense of, so now I'm irritated and she says something, so I snap at her because that's my response. That is an outlet that I can now get snippy or snarky or just be short with her when she has done nothing wrong. That's not fair to her. So then I start to feel a little guilty. It's like, crap, I shouldn't have snapped at Sarah like that. And so then it just goes back and forth, and it creates this very uncomfortable and unhealthy relationship at times when it's like, I know that this is an issue. I'm not going to address it. I'm just going to let it continue to trigger me and create these events. And then because I don't know how to respond, I'm just going to get short with my wife and then put her in a bad mood. Okay, I'm calm now. Babe, why are you in a bad mood? So I'd say one healthy way to fix that is you got to have an accountability partner that knows what you're going through and can help you. And that means sharing. That means opening up. That means asking people for help. And I'm not just saying walk around and tell everybody your problems, but find that one person you trust and that one person that loves you enough that will take the time to help you, and allow them the freedom to call you on your BS when they see it. And just be like, I'll use me and my wife, for example, when my anxiety starts to pop up and things are happening, she'll just go, Brandon, stop. Go into the other room until you calm down. And she's recognizing that my levels are going up, and she doesn't want it to get to a point of where I just go off and start yelling at the kids because they're being too loud, or I get on her because of whatever reason. When it's something inside of me, my body is just naturally responding. Another thing you could do is when you get these traumatic experiences and these traumatic moments, it creates neural pathways within your brain. Those can be overridden after time. And a way that you do that is you override them with positive memories, positive experiences. And I know that can be hard for guys to go down the spiral of, well, I've got PTS, I've got TBI, I got depression, I've got anxiety, and it's, I'm depressed, so therefore I do this. Oh, well, now that I did this, I'm sad even more. And it's this dark spiral that just keeps going and going and going, and it's hard to pull yourself out of it. But if you can get to the point where you're like, I refuse to live like this. I refuse to be a victim of my own experiences. And you go out and it's like, pick something. Just pick something that works for you. Create happy memories. Go out and help somebody. Go out and volunteer at an organization. Go out and just do some good to create those better memories, and flood your brain with positivity and good memories to just push down and overwrite and erase the negative and traumatic experience, and let the positiveness, let's just go with the word, let the positive memories control your life and not those traumatic experiences that you've had. So I'm going to leave it with this. If you need help, if you need someone to talk to, find that person, or you reach out to me. One of the numbers that you can call is 988. That's 988. That's the Veterans Crisis Line. Or if you don't want to talk to anybody, you can text 838-255. And then vets, press 1 when you make that phone call to talk to somebody that'll understand the process that you're going through a little bit better. Ladies and gentlemen, get out there and do some good. And let's overcome those negative memories and create better neural pathways. Make all of our lives a little bit better. Hey, listen, if you liked the episode, if you liked the show, be sure to follow me on social media, like and share. Let's get the word out there. Let's talk about PTS, and I hope everyone has a great and wonderful day.